My name is Rebecca Hayes, I'm 43 years old, and I'm the oldest daughter in my family. For more than 2 decades, I've risked my life in service to my country, spending birthdays in safe houses and trading comfort for danger without a second thought. But none of that mattered the night my father stood in front of 300 wedding guests, smiled, and introduced me as just a security guard, right after calling my younger brother the pride of his life. I can still hear the polite laughter, see the sideways glances, feel the heat rising in my chest as if the room itself had turned on me. And in that moment, I knew, he was about to learn exactly who his daughter really was. Before we get into how that night changed everything, tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have known you best? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because you're going to want to hear how this story ends. The hotel mirror caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting to see a stranger staring back, a woman with dark circles hidden under a thin layer of foundation, hair pinned in a way that felt more like armor than style. 3 days ago, those eyes were locked on the jungle canopy of Colombia from a helicopter door. Now they were locked on the reflection of a black dress I had barely zipped up in time for my brother's wedding. From the ballroom next door, I could hear my father's laugh. It was the same laugh he used when closing an insurance deal, warm enough to make anyone believe him, until you realized you were the punchline. Tonight, I knew exactly who the punchline was. I took a breath, smoothing the fabric at my waist, and caught my own gaze again in the mirror. I looked composed, but I could feel the pressure building in my chest, the same tightness I'd felt every time my father introduced me as Becca. She works for the government, with a shrug. A burst of applause erupted beyond the closed door. My grip tightened around the water glass in my hand. In the mirror behind me, I could see a sliver of the ballroom through the slightly ajar door, my father at the head table, basking in the spotlight. The glass felt cold against my palm. The mirror felt colder. And then my phone buzzed. One message. 3 words that cut through the noise. Turn on channel 7. I slipped out into the hotel lobby, the muffled music from the ballroom fading behind me. The lobby's wide mirror-lined wall caught my reflection before anything else did. My face was pale, but my eyes, they were alert now, scanning, calculating. The TV above the bar was already on channel 7. At first, it was just footage, grainy aerial shots of choppers slicing through a dawn sky. Then came the anchor's voice. In what's being called the most successful anti-narcotics operation in decades, the DEA has dismantled the Santos cartel. And then, my name. Rebecca Hayes. Special Agent in Charge, DEA. The same woman currently staring at herself from both the television screen and the mirror behind the bar. My chest tightened. Not from fear, but from the cruel irony, 24 years in this job, and my father still didn't know who I really was. Or maybe he'd never cared to. A couple walked by, glancing at the TV for just a moment before returning to their conversation. No one in this lobby knew that the woman in the little black dress was the one they were watching. I shifted, catching a sharper reflection of myself in the mirror's edge. It felt like the glass was whispering the truth no one in that ballroom had ever wanted to hear. From beyond the lobby doors came the faint clink of metal on glass, the unmistakable signal that my father was about to give a toast. My pulse ticked in time with the sound. I turned back toward the ballroom entrance, one last look at the woman in the mirror. She didn't look away this time. The ballroom doors swung open just as my father's voice filled the air, warm and confident, the way a salesman warms up a room before closing a deal. I slipped in quietly, staying near the back. And my son Daniel, he announced, gesturing toward the head table, is everything a father could hope for. A football star, a college graduate, a man with a beautiful wife and a corner office. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a success story. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Daniel raised his glass, beaming. My father didn't pause long before shifting gears. Now, my daughter Rebecca. The room seemed to grow stiller, even before he spoke again. She's had a different path. Dropped out of college, works some kind of government security job. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but, well, it's not exactly what you dream of for your little girl. There it was. The familiar burn in my chest. 24 years of dismissals wrapped in a smile. I reached for the nearest champagne flute. Someone had left it half full, and in its golden surface I saw my reflection, distorted, as if the glass itself couldn't decide who I was. My jaw tightened. The room buzzed softly with conversation, but from my corner I caught fragments, quiet chuckles, a guest leaning toward another to whisper, "Security guard, right?" The words were small, but they landed like darts. From where I stood, the mirrored column along the side wall caught my image in full: black dress, straight shoulders, eyes that had stared down cartel leaders and corrupt officials. In that reflection, I saw no trace of the failure my father described. I didn't move yet. Not here. Not now. But a plan was taking shape, one step at a time. The next time I saw myself in that mirror, I promised, it wouldn't be as the silent daughter in the shadows. Dad. My voice cut across the ballroom like a sharp note in a quiet song. Conversation stilled, and every head turned toward me. My father blinked, clearly not expecting to be interrupted. "I need to correct something," I said, stepping forward. The click of my heels echoed, each step catching a glimpse of my reflection in the mirrored panels lining the walls. The woman in those reflections looked steady, unshaken, while my father's expression began to flicker. "You said I dropped out of college," I continued. "That's not true. I left Georgetown after my first year because I was recruited into the DEA. I've been a federal agent for 24 years. A low murmur spread through the room. Someone at the front table glanced at their phone, then back at me, then back to their phone again. "You said I work as a security guard," I pressed on, my voice calm but cutting. "I'm a special agent in charge for South American operations. 3 days ago, I led the largest cartel takedown in DEA history, Operation Silent Thunder. 37 arrests. $2 billion in drugs and assets seized. That's what I do for a living." The mirrored column beside me reflected my father's face, drained of color, as clearly as it reflected mine. The image was almost poetic, his authority shrinking while mine solidified with every word. Then came the sound, sharp and final, the champagne flute slipping from his hand and shattering on the marble floor. Pieces scattered across the room, glinting under the chandeliers. I caught my own reflection in those shards, fragmented but unmistakably mine. "You've spent years deciding I was a disappointment," I said, scanning the crowd. "Not one of you ever asked what I actually did. You just filled in the blanks with whatever fit your story." Someone near the back whispered, "She's on the news right now," and phones began lighting up like a constellation. Gasps followed as faces turned from their screens to me, realizing the woman in the black dress was the same one rappelling from helicopters on live footage. I let the silence hang for a moment, my reflection in the wall mirror now perfectly aligned with the woman I felt inside, strong, unapologetic. "This," I said softly, "is who I've always been. You just never bothered to see it." The room was so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner. My father stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, while the guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't need to. Every word I spoke landed like a measured strike. I've spent nights in safe houses, months away from home, and years chasing men who would kill without hesitation. I've seen things you couldn't imagine, and I've done it to keep people safe, including all of you. The mirrored wall at the far end caught my profile. My shoulders were square, my head high. For the first time tonight, the reflection felt like an ally, not just a silent witness. I could see movement in the crowd, guests lowering their glasses, leaning forward. Some were still glued to their phones, reading headlines that told the story my father had never cared to hear. I let the silence breathe for a moment, the way I'd learned to in interrogation rooms. It makes people lean in, it makes the truth land harder. "This isn't about proving you wrong," I said finally. "It's about telling the truth in a room where lies have been told for too long." In the reflection, I saw my father's eyes drop, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of his own words had finally found him. That image alone was almost enough. Almost. I didn't need applause. I didn't need validation. I just needed this moment, where the truth stood taller than the story he had built about me. I turned toward my brother, offered him a small smile. Congratulations, Daniel. I hope you'll be very happy together. Then I stepped back from the head table, my heels clicking against the marble. The sound seemed louder now, carrying me toward the ballroom doors. No one spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, it was reverent, like they knew they'd just seen something that couldn't be undone. Rebecca, wait. My father's voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. I paused, hand on the door. In the mirrored panel beside me, I saw him, head bowed, shoulders heavy. Not the man who boomed stories over dinner, but a man stripped bare. "I'm sorry," he said. And for the first time, it didn't sound like words he was supposed to say. It sounded real. I met his gaze in the reflection, not directly. "I know." Then I pushed open the door. The night air met me like an old friend. Cool, steady, honest. I crossed the parking lot to my car, catching my reflection one last time in the tinted glass. The woman staring back was whole. The dark circles, the fatigue, they were still there. But so was something stronger, peace. My phone buzzed. 17 missed calls from reporters. Dozens of texts from colleagues congratulating me. And one from Director Martinez. "The president wants to meet with you Monday morning. Hope you enjoyed the wedding." A laugh escaped before I could stop it. I started the car, my reflection in the rearview mirror holding my gaze for just a moment longer, steady, certain, unafraid. This wasn't about winning. It was about finally being seen. People think the hardest battles are fought in the field, in the moments when everything could end with a single wrong move. But I've learned that sometimes, the hardest battles are fought in living rooms, at family tables, in the spaces where love is supposed to live but judgment has made a home instead. For years, I thought if I worked harder, if I achieved more, my father would finally see me for who I was. I waited for his approval like a soldier waiting for orders, standing still, holding my breath. But that night, I realized something I should have known long ago: you don't need someone's permission to be proud of yourself. Standing in that ballroom, looking at my reflection in the mirrors and the shards of glass on the floor, I saw the truth. I wasn't there to win his approval. I was there to reclaim my own story. It's not about the job title, the paycheck, or the applause. Those fade. What lasts is the quiet knowledge that you've stayed true to yourself, even when it cost you. That you've done the work no one sees, carried the weight no one else could, and still found the strength to keep going. Some people will never see you for who you are. And that's okay. Because when you finally see yourself clearly, when you can look in the mirror and meet your own eyes without flinching, you realize that's the only recognition you ever really needed. That night, I didn't just walk out of a wedding. I walked into the rest of my life.